Hi everyone, Jesse here with eTrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at, and I'll show you how to install our DeeMaxx disc brake kit on our Gooseneck triple axle trailer. This is going to be a great upgrade for you if your trailer has drum brakes, and also if you're having issues with one of your calipers. If your trailer has disc brakes currently, it might just be easier to go ahead and swap everything over while you're trying to figure out that issue. DeeMaxx makes really high quality products, and it's nice just for peace of mind to have everything swapped over and brand new, so you know you'll have plenty of life out of your brakes. We'll take a closer look at our disc brake assembly on our neighbor's trailer. So everything here is going to be Max coating, which is DeeMaxx's patented coating that they've done a ton of testing, and it always passes and exceeds what everybody else is doing, so it's going to last through the test of time. So as I said, Max coating here. We do have a bearing cap with a rubber cap here. So if you did have a easy lube fitting on the spindle here, you could just pop that off, put in some grease whenever you needed to. The brake pads are going to be ceramic, so it's going to be standard, pretty similar to your automotive brakes. And then our rotor is vented in the center, so that's going to dissipate heat. And they also added holes around the hub here that's going to also dissipate heat, which with brakes, the one thing that you're always battling is heat dissipation, which is why moving on from drums to discs is such a good upgrade. These will not overheat, whereas with drums, if you think about it, they're braking in an enclosed drum, so that heat's just going to build up and stay there. Whereas with disc brakes, you're just always going to have air flowing through them, so they're really cool down. There's a couple things you want to do to make sure you get the right kit for your trailer, and that is to find out your bolt pattern. You can measure that, or they make tools to go over it, or you could probably contact the manufacturer and they'll have those specs for you. Also, another thing is the axle capacity. Ours is 7,200 pounds. It's written very clearly on a stamp in the center of our axles. Most likely there's going to be a sticker or a little badge that says the weight capacity. So on this trailer, we were just going from old disc brakes that had a couple bad brake lines, and our neighbor just decided to go ahead and upgrade everything. So all we needed was a few brake hoses and this disc brake kit itself. If you are going from drums to the disc brakes, you're most likely using electric drums. So you would have to get an actuator in order to push the hydraulic fluid or brake fluid to the calipers to get those to function properly. And then you'd also need a full brake line kit. So just make sure if you are switching from drums that you're getting everything, so whenever you're ready to install, you don't have to worry about purchasing anything else. Another nice thing about switching to disc from drums is the maintenance. There's a lot less parts, and it's going to be easier to check your parts out. With our wheel installed, we can see the pad life that we have. We can also check the rotor and see if it's wearing evenly or not. That's really nice, because with a drum, you would have to completely disassemble that just to look at your shoes. And at that point, you're that far into the job, you might as well replace it, even if they're worn out or not. If you have any more questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you pointed in the right direction. And as for the installation with this, you do have to find a way to lift the weight of your trailer to get these tires off the ground so you can remove them. So that by itself, before you even get into the actual installation process, can be a handful. So I'd understand if you weren't looking to do this yourself, check out our dealer locator. You can find someone local to you that would be happy to get this set up for you. If you are looking to see how these get installed, then follow along and I'll walk you through the process. To begin our installation, you'll need to find a way to safely lift your trailer up into the air, just high enough so that the tires are off the ground. Then you'll remove the wheels. Ours were just 7/8 lug nuts. Just remove those, pop the wheels off. And then we can move on to our caliper. So usually you would just go around the back and disconnect your brake hose from the caliper, but we're actually replacing our brake hoses. So I'm going to leave those connected there and remove them from the brake lines. But to take our caliper off, it's going to be a 13 millimeter slide bolt. It's going to be one on the top and one on the bottom. And take your caliper off, and I'll turn it around. I'll show you the fitting that you would disconnect if you weren't doing the hoses like I am. It's just going to be a 3/8. I'd recommend using a flare wrench. And then on these older trailers, you want to watch and make sure that this brake line here, this hard line, is not twisting while you're removing the fitting. Otherwise, you're going to have to replace the hose anyways. So just for peace of mind, you might want to just order the hoses right off the bat so you can get everything set up the first time and you don't end up having to go to the store and trying to find a matching hose. Now we'll take off our oil bath cap here. Usually you can take these off with some big pliers and use a pry bar to hold the stud so the wheel doesn't rotate. I have a large socket, I think it's 2 1/4 inches. I'm just going to impact it right off. And make sure you have something to catch the oil, like a pan. Now we'll work on taking our hub apart. We'll start with our cotter pin. Get that out, get set aside. Move on to our nut. It should be installed hand tight. You should be able to take it off by hand, but ours is a little tight. So I'll take a 1 1/2 inch socket, break that loose. Get that threaded out, and we are reusing this also. So set that aside, and we'll want to make sure we clean all the oil off of all this. We'll take our washer out. And our outer bearing should be pretty free. If you wiggle the hub back and forth, it usually pops it out enough to where you can get your fingers on it and pull it out. If you use a flathead screwdriver to kind of get in there and slide it out, that usually works. Now it's just held in by our bearing seal. So sometimes you can just kind of pop that loose. Since ours is pretty old, it doesn't want to come off very easily. Ideally, you would have a slide hammer or something because we want to pull it back as straight as we can as to not damage our spindle. But what I'll do is hold it on one side with a small pry bar. That way it's not going at a crazy angle or anything. And I'll pry out the other side with another pry bar. You can usually feel it kind of pop loose. And then we'll pull it straight out and let that drain in our pan. Now we'll take our caliper bracket off. It's held in by some 9/16 bolts and nuts. So we'll use a socket and a wrench and get those removed. Now we'll take our bracket, our new bracket, and what we're looking for is we are on the driver's side, so we want it as close to 3 o'clock as possible, but you also have to make sure that you're lining up with your holes on your spindle. So get that in line, and then I'll start sliding the new bolts through. Those will hold it up in place, and I'll thread on our new nuts. Now we'll tighten that down in a star pattern with our 9/16 socket and wrench. Next we'll start packing our bearings. So we'll just get a good handful of grease and just start working it in the back side until we start to see it come out the other side, and then I'll rotate it and do that until everything's nice and filled with grease. And once you finish the inside bearing, you can just set it down inside of our hub and then move on to your outside bearing, and it's the same process. It's just going to be smaller. So I'll finish this one up and put it on a nice clean surface. And we'll go on to putting our seal on. I'll set our seal on top of our hub here. Get it as centered as possible. And then I'm just using a hole saw with a punch. You really just need a flat surface, so you could use a small 2x4 or something like that. We just want to get it as flat as possible and not push it in too far on a side. And you can kind of hear the sound difference once you're sealed like that. Take that off and just rub your finger around, make sure it's nice and even all around the edge. Now we'll take our hub assembly, lift it up, and slide it over our spindle, being careful not to damage that seal at all. And push it back. And now since we are converting this to greasable and not using the oil, what I'll do is just take my grease gun, kind of push it in there, and I'm going to fill this up with as much grease as I can. So I'll just pump it till I see it get pretty full back there. Then I'll rotate our rotor and fill it up some more. Once you have that nice and full, we can slide our outer bearing into place. Then we'll take our washer, slide that over, and we'll start threading on our nut. We'll take our torque wrench with a 1.5 inch socket, and we'll tighten that down while rotating the rotor. This is just to make sure everything's seated properly, because eventually we're going to back it off and keep it hand tight. As you can see, it's hand tight, so what I'll do is line up our cotter pin hole with one of the slots in our castle nut, and we'll get our cotter pin into place. Now we're ready to install our caliper. Before you slide it into position, just push your slides back or else they'll be in the way. Then we'll take it, get it into place over our rotor. May have to kind of hold the pads to get it to slide over. Then we'll line it up with our threaded holes on the back side and start threading those in. Now we'll take our torque wrench and a 13mm socket, get those tightened and torqued down. Now we can install our grease caps. What we want to do with this is try to get it as centered as possible. Then we'll take a dead blow and start tapping it in. Just want to start soft because you want to make sure that it's going in all around. And once it's nice and flush, we'll take our yellow seal and get that put into place. Now we have our brake assembly all assembled, and we can connect our hose to the back of our caliper. There's probably a plastic cap. You can just pull that off, and then we'll thread our fitting on. And these can be pretty tricky to get started, especially if you're using an older brake line that has rust built up. Just make sure you have it pretty hand tight before you take a wrench to it. We'll take our 3/8 wrench and tighten it down. Once we have all of our assemblies built and installed, we can bleed our brake system. So we want to start at the caliper furthest from our actuator. So I'm at the passenger rear caliper, and I have my friend Joe helping me out. He's going to actuate the brakes. You could just pull the breakaway switch if you don't have a test box like we're using. So I'll open my bleeder, and then I'll have him run the actuator. We'll run fluid through this. You'll see air bubbles, so we just want to run it until the air bubbles stop and we're just getting clean fluid. Now that I have clean fluid, I'll just close my bleeder up. And we'll move on to the next caliper. All that's left is to put our wheels back on and torque down our lug nuts. Then after that, I'd recommend to take it out on a test drive, make a few hard stops to bed your brakes in. But other than that, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the DeeMaxx disc brake kit on our Gooseneck triple axle trailer.